Here. Buongiorno, buon pomeriggio, e buonasera, Lazio world. Welcome. It has been quite some time, a nice little off season for Caleb and myself, as we, clearly needed to recover from a tumultuous season of ups and downs. And we had an episode a few weeks back, about a month ago, in which we talked about potential signings. And lo and behold, a lot of those players that we featured in that episode ended up being signed. I'm pretty proud of us, Caleb. It was pretty spot on. I was happy with how things shook out. I've been happy overall with the activity from Lazio. We've got new kits. We have new players. We have a lot of players coming in, a lot of players coming out.
We do.
Aronzo, we've got the bulk of our team that was there through that and playing some preseason matches. So a lot to discuss. We plan on featuring an in-depth episode prior to the season kicking off, but this will be our chance to get a little bit of state of the union of where Lazio is at and chat about the Mercato up to date. So, Caleb, just a brief sense of how are you feeling with the way Lazio is tracking right now?
I'm feeling better. I think I'm feeling a little more confident. Still way too early to really have anything solidified, but I feel good. I love the idea that the fact that we're signing players early. So that's always encouraging because there is a lot of turnover. And so the more time you get together, better things hopefully look in the season.
Well, it's good to see our good friend Adfen on YouTube chatting in, mentioning also a new captain, and we'll touch on that. A lot of news, a lot of change. Could be hopeful. You could be fearful, whichever side of the fence you land. But let's touch on it. We'll start with, where we are at in this transfer window. Let's talk about the incomings. First of all, we've got, I'll run through the players. Loum Chauna, winger, French winger from Salernitana. Tijani Noslin, a winger, another versatile player, right? We were thinking more winger. We've seen him featured in preseason in place of Tati as well, out of Hellas Verona. Fiasco Dele Bashiru, attacking midfield player out of Turkey and Hatayspor. Gaetano Castrovilli, center mid from Fiorentina. Nuno Tavares, Portuguese left back out of Arsenal. Those are incoming players. Anybody I missed, Caleb?
I think for the most part, in terms of the first team guys, did you mention the Barcelona kid?
No.
Yeah. What was his name again? You remember?
But, yeah. Player I don't think will feature.
Doubted too.
But yeah.
Regardless.
Departures, and I'll touch on first the key departures: Felipe Anderson, Luis Alberto, Daichi Kamada, and of course Ciro Immobile. Some guys who weren't necessarily on the squad last year were either out on loan. The likes of Raul Moro, he's gone. Marcos Antonio, we've seen him now again out on loan. That confirmed Sao Paulo in Brazil. Luis Maximiano out. I believe that was a sale now that was triggered while he was out on loan. So key departures. So let's start with this, Caleb. You tell me, of these incoming transfers, let's just start. Overall sentiment. What are your thoughts?
Encouraging. I think that's the word. I think that's the only word we can use, considering just how many of them aren't necessarily Serie A stars just yet, but certainly have potential to be some really good players in this league. So again, it's encouraging. I like the profiles that we're getting. It seems that they align with what both Baroni, the front office, want. They're not stars, but they definitely have the capabilities of being some real top players for us in this club. And so again, they're coming in early, and that's all encouraging signs because front office is aligned with the coach. We didn't have so much of that last season. We got a lot of late arrivals because of that, and maybe that affected our play early on because we had a rough start. And so, yeah, it's encouraging. I really love it. I think I can confidently say we are the most active team in the market right now in Europe. Period. I can't 100% tell you that we've signed the most players of anyone else, but certainly having the most in the top 5 leagues at this point, which is crazy.
Yeah, been active. Look, that's a long
It's-
list of incoming players for us to be able to get them.
yeah.
While we're still in preseason, is rare, and you combine that with the number of key departures, right? We were talking about. I listed some of the guys that didn't matter, that weren't on the squad this year, but we're talking about starting 11 key fundamental players that have played a role in the identity of this club for many years, in Felipe Anderson, Luis Alberto, and Ciro Immobile, and then Daichi Kamada, who is an important player under Tudor the back half of the season. So this squad is one that is going to be very different in so many ways. Right? Different, obviously different names on the back of the kits, different style of play, players that we kind of were going through maybe a revolution of Italian players under Sadi, and now we've seen players from all over the world, and very versatile players that can play, particularly in attack, that can play across the front three in different positions that could be useful, and athletic players that bring a sense of pace along with some technical ability, but tons of question marks as much as there is anything. I think a couple of these guys have played in Serie A, which is great, but this is a significant step up from Salernitana or Hellas Verona with bigger expectations and what should be bigger roles for these players. So
I do want to add as well that another sort of difference within this Mercato and the previous ones in the Sadi is a lot less focus on like really elite players on the ball, right? Like I think Sadi was looking for those types of profiles where they were really good on the ball. With the players that we have, the technical players are going to be wrong as well. You have to be to play at this level, but you can tell that that's not the number one priority. It's a bonus, and so I think that's pretty interesting too. It may be a signifier of how we want to play this season.
Yeah, and certainly an area that we probably still need to add, and we'll get to that. So, who's the incoming player you're most excited about?
I think for me, it has to be Noslin. For me, Noslin was on my radar early on. Was on everyone's radar early on because he was been linked with us ever since really Baroni arrived. And for me, he's the only player that we've signed that's actually had success, like some pretty good success already within Serie A. So he's the most, I think, day one ready. I think we're going to have some growing pains early on, just because of the adapting of all these different players and this turnover rate of players and personnel and coach. But Nosen last season came in January, right off the bat, immediately kicked off really well his campaign here, coming from the Eredivisie, got 5 goals, 4 assists, in about 1,300 minutes, 17 appearances. And that's him playing on a team that's more defensive, a team where he had to play striker, right wing, and left wing at times, all across the front three. And so 9 goal contributions in 17 games right off of your first, like literally 3-4 months in the league. Those are good signs, and it's pretty exciting. So Nosen for me. And I think Nosen is the most sort of Felipe Ander-esque type of signing that we've made, right? I think it is a like for like swap in that sort of department.
Yeah, it's for me. I agree when it comes to Noslin, but I'll say the most excited I am for a player, and this player probably has, you can argue, the highest potential, but also tons of question marks, and certainly not a player that is probably not ready yet. But Loom Chona, I'm excited to see what he is as a player, who he becomes. A player that has obviously a ton of hype behind him. We've talked about him when we were highlighting some of the players we could sign, and comes from a strong French national team program. He has been a leading scorer in his U19s. I think he's a player that could fetch us something one day, and could be a player that we're talking about in a couple years that gets sold to a big team in England, or your Real Madrid. He's got that type of potential, and so that intrigues me from him. And I think when you talk about another player that is intriguing because we've seen a lot of potential out of him, but also again with most of these players, like, lots of questions. Gaetano Castrovilli is a player that he was, he had a breakout season a few years ago, and he was heralded as one of the future players for the Italian national team. I'm a sports card collector. Oh, and he was a player that I bought like 3 or 4 of his rookie cards, because I was like, this guy is going to be something. And unfortunately was just bit with the injury bug and completely derailed his career. But if he can come to Lazio and find his health and fitness, I mean, that is a player that can provide us with a lot of things we lost from Sergei Milinkovic-Savic, in that he's got a knack for being in the right place in the right time. He can push the ball. He's very attack minded, but at the same time, like, he's a box to box, and I just love what he can bring if he can be on the field and be healthy, which has been ultimately what's just derailed him. So he'll provide a ton of balance for us in so many ways. So he's a player, while Chona, I think, kind of hope and pray, and there's a lot of intrigue with potential. I'm excited for what hopefully is a turning of the chapter for Castrovilli in his career, and kind of regain some of that. So
I'm glad you mentioned him, because I think another reason why Noslin excites me about Castrovilli, and that is, these are 2 players that I think can be long-term guys here. Like, Shuona, a lot of talent. Like you said, he may be so talented that we may lose him early on. It's very rare to find players at sort of this like stage in their life where they're either entering their prime like Noslin, or in their prime where they make a move like this. And these are 2 guys that I can see being here for the next 4 or 5 years, like Noslin and Castrovilli, and sort of building that next core. And so that in particular is what excites me, because it's cool having the young talents and all. It's cool being able to sell off people for a ton of money, make headlines that way. But at the end of the day, the dream is to have guys like Luis Alberto and Ciro who decide, I want to be here and I want to keep playing here and I want to win things here. And I think those 2 players that we've mentioned could be those guys, could be that profile that does.
Yeah, absolutely. So on the other end, Caleb, we talked about key departures. Who's that departure that you think hurts us the most?
Okay, I'm gonna say 2 categories of hurt, and I think one of these players can align in both sides. You have the category of hurt of they'll hurt us on the field, and they'll also hurt us off the field. I think Cheeto, while he may have been limited on the field, I still think he had very much a role to play in the team, on the field and off the field. I do think that at the very least, one more year. I really would have loved to seen him sort of help sort of carry this guard over, right? Like sort of help transition this new sort of guard of players into this next sort of era that we're coming into. Like this, like last year really marked the end of an era with the departure of Ciro and Alberto that really just definitively cut that era that we've had, that you could say maybe started in 2018, around there, with those core players of Milinkovic, Savic, Ciro Immobile, Alberto, all these guys, and Felipe Anderson as well can be counted into that. And so I would love to have seen that. So I think Cheeto is obviously a big loss there, but also a big loss for fans like ourselves. I was genuinely really hurt about that. It sucks to see, and also I hated to see all the like negative talk surrounding him. I saw a lot of hypocrisy on the interwebs, classic on Twitter and stuff. These are the same people that were yelling and clamoring for him to leave, get out, useless, are also now posting these thank you for everything. We appreciate you. I saw a lot of that. And I don't know, like that really rubbed me the wrong way because there were people like begging for this guy to leave. And you see the videos, you see his message where he's getting emotional, saying goodbye. And then all of a sudden, oh, thank you. But regardless of that, the drama there, Cheeto's a big loss. We can go into Cheeto a little bit more about his legacy if you want now. But yeah, what about you, Sean?
Yeah, I think you can. I think overall, probably Ciro Immobile in terms of just the impact, the whole impact that he has. Right, you're talking about losing our captain. You're talking about a legend. Now, just strictly on the field, Felipe Anderson did so much, and he was the most consistent player we had.
Yeah.
And he was the player who played the most, more
Mhm.
than anybody. He could be relied upon. And Cheetah, the past 2 seasons, obviously a big part of his production falling off a cliff was just injury related. And we
Yeah.
weren't sure if that was happenstance or if that was just a sign of him aging.
Mhm.
But look, Cheetah just such a massive impact because we knew when he was on the field, it did boost everything. And when he was on, he was still great. And, he performed when we needed to on big stages. Champions League, he still was bagging crucial goals. And,
Was.
if he was fit, which, you look at Cheetah and he still looks like he did 10 years ago, right? He's absolute. There's no question ever about him being somebody that works really hard, and his physique and his fitness levels are always really strong. So,
Yeah.
there's always a hope that he kind of regains that. And I was looking forward to rooting for that. And just the impact he's had in Serie A. When it comes to Cheeto, that's one of the things I didn't want to see him at a rival. Certainly, you don't want to see him go to a Juve, a Napoli,
True.
but I wouldn't have minded had he gone to a mid-table side or to a Como, who is obviously making a splash coming into Serie A or a Venezia, because I'm a obviously Lazio first always, but he's a player that I want to root for, and he's a player that has made such a not just an impact on Serie A. I think it gets lost, and people don't give him the just credit he
Yeah.
deserves. We're talking about one of the all-time. He's not just Lazio's all-time leading goal scorers. Oh, that's nice.
Yes.
We're talking about a legend of Serie A, a player that has bagged more goals than countless legends of this
Yeah.
league. And right, and I wanted to see him climb up that ladder, a ladder that was very realistic,
Yeah.
for him to see himself not just in the top 5, but a real claim to maybe get into the top 3.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
he when you look at it, he sits 7 goals behind Roberto Baggio, right?
Mhm.
And he had a chance just this season to jump Baggio, to jump Di Natale, and if he found himself with 15 goals, he would have been in the top 5. and that's not unrealistic. So I wanted to see that. I wanted to root for that.
Yeah.
But alas, he's in Turkey with Besiktas, and a whole new adventure for him. And I've got my I was I was very quick to purchase my Besiktas kit. For those on YouTube watching, it was very quick. So I'll be rooting for them and watching along and hoping for the very best. But it does leave a hole, and a hole that I'm not super confident can be filled. Look, let's say this. I don't want to say never, right? But like, to expect anybody to be Ciro Immobile is insane. Again, all-time leading goal scorer, a European Golden Boot winner, league record holder for goals, tied with Higuain, but 36 goals in a season. We're talking about things that have never been done before. But in order so yes, that's not fair to expect that, but I don't know that we're going to see the necessary production that it'll take to maybe see us claim top 4 again, given right what we saw in front of us last year with Totti and some of the struggles. Now, a lot of players struggled last year. A lot of changes were made. We talked about Serie A is a tough league to figure out, particularly in your first season. So I'm not writing off Totti based on the challenges of the first year. And hopefully Baroni has come in and instilled some confidence, and Totti has grown. But tell you what, it's a pretty short leash for Totti because now he has a full off season. He's gotten a full season under his belt, and if he can't start bagging goals in the first couple matches, it's going to be interesting, and we could be in trouble. So yeah.
Yeah, no, and I think I think kind of going back to Ciro, had he played for Milan and Inter Juventus, I think the narrative around him would be very different. And I don't think I'm being biased in saying that, because as you said, it's not just his Lazio, it's not just a Lazio legacy. It's what the league as a whole is losing, right? And I also think that even fans of Lazio take for granted a player that is willing to stay at a club that long in a day and age like today. Stay that long, be that productive, and at the same time, be so receptive to the fans, really embrace everything about the club. And
especially
I think,
when you're not winning trophies and you're not qualifying for Champions League, and you've got the chaos sometimes that is Lotito and drama. So for a player and changing of managers, so for a player, to your point, that sticks around like that,
I'm saying
very rare.
It's easy to stick around in Madrid for 10 years because you're winning Champions League every other year, and there's no really step up from there for most people. But for someone like Ciro, when you're scoring 36 goals in the season, right, you have some new offers on the table. And if you're doing that consistently, you're scoring 25 plus goals a season in Serie A, a defensive league like Serie A. There are offers. It's very, in that day, it's very easy to just go make that move to Chelsea. How many nines have we seen move to Chelsea after one good season? Ciro, he could have had opportunity to do that, but he didn't. And it's not because he didn't have offers. And so I don't think people take that for granted. Yes, okay, you may find a prolific goal scorer that could score that 25, 30 goals a season, but will he stay around as long as Ciro?
Ciro is only, his legacy, I'm comfortable in saying this, will only age with time. We'll get better and better with time, and we're already seeing that.
100%.
Take the Euros, for example. All the hate that Ciro Immobile got from Azzurri fans because of his production or lack thereof with the Italian national team, and so many Laziali and people that watched the matches would be like, look, man, like the chances aren't always there. Like the midfield has to create, the opportunities aren't there. But also look at what Ciro does to open up space for others. And in Mancini's system, the wingers were the ones that were scoring the goals, and what Ciro does helps everybody around him. And we lifted a European trophy with Ciro as our starting striker. a player that bagged 2 goals, had another, I want to say 2 assists. He led goal contributions for Italy, and here we are in Euro 2024, and the only attacking player that even registered a goal was Zaccagni. You're welcome, world. And no striker scored a goal, whether that was Retegui or the tattooed Zlatan, as everybody proclaims him to be, and it honestly didn't provide anything outside of that. So not only were they not scoring goals, but they weren't really helping the attack. And so when you look back at Ciro, all of a sudden it's like, well, hey, it wasn't so bad, was it? So I think a lot of people will start doing the same thing when it comes to Serie A goal scorers, that you look back and say, holy crap, this guy was bagging 20 goals, more than any other player. Only one player in the history of Serie A had more 20-goal seasons than Ciro Immobile. He did that more than any Italian player of all time. So as you start to step away from the bias that is your club affiliations, people will hopefully start to respect him a little bit more.
No, I think you said that perfectly. I think that over time it is one of those cases where we're gonna. I say the same thing for Neymar as well. On my end, is these are players that were not appreciated as much as they should have in this day, and that will be more and more rare as we go. We're seeing it now, particularly Jogo Bonito and Neymar, and then these like true finishing nines. Man, they're getting more and more rare. They used to be left and right in Serie A. Like you turn anywhere, every team almost seemed like they had a clinical finisher, but nowadays not so much. And yeah.
So when you compare Ciro, right, in the Serie A world, you're of course you're depending on how old you are. So in my generation, you're used to seeing your Ronaldos, like the phenomena, the real Ronaldo, right? And so when you maybe stack up a Ciro against seeing some of that, you go, okay, well, he's not that. Very different players, and you had so many legends, whether they were
Adriano, like he has so many amazing strikers in this league.
Yeah, right. But I think now you start to see everybody looks at this as like a Italian national team struggle. Oh, the strikers, where I think it's worldwide. Yeah. When you see that, there's such a rarity in that position, so you'll start to look at Ciro a lot more fondly. So let's go back to the Mercato. Caleb, give me your overall rating out of 10. Where do you see this Mercato?
10?
I'll say so far.
I'm gonna give you out of 10 rating. I'm gonna give you a letter grade as well.
Okay.
I'm gonna give it an 8 out of 10, which may seem high to some, and I'll give my reasoning, and I'm gonna give it a B plus.
Okay, let's hear why.
The reasoning why is because we're getting players in early. First of all, we're getting players that we need early. We're taking actions to replace players that we lost. We're not done just yet. There's still some work to do. But within 2 weeks, we bring in 6 guys. About 4 of them would be considered first team, regulars, rotation players. Other 2 are more young guys. And I do like the profile of players that we're signing where, Shauna is 20. He's really young, but has some Serie A experience. Bashiru, he comes in at 23 years old, but has already quite a few seasons in Europe under his belt. Nelson comes in, proven himself in the league already. And someone like Castorili, another proven player in Serie A that is sort of turning a page here. So I think even though we have a lot of unknowns and how this team will gel, strictly looking, and we'll rate that once we start playing, but strictly looking at the types of profiles we're signing, all I can ask is there's a clear identity and plan. There seems to be a plan in place because we're getting these guys in quick. B, they're guys that fit the coach and what he wants to do. And then we're getting them early as well. And I do think they have good potential. I'm not going to give it a 9 or 10 yet because we haven't signed that sort of guy. For us, I think last year was Kamada. Kamada was sort of that really big, wow signing of holy crap. We got the most in-demand free agent. How that turned out, it's another story. But we're still lacking sort of that real impact statement signing. But we have some good, solid players to build around. And for that reason, I give that. So maybe it's more of a 7 out of 10 and a B minus, maybe around closer to there.
Okay. Mine was a 7. I kind of went back and forth between a 6 or a 7. I'll be generous and say 7. I think it's a C. I think it's a solid foundational market. I think some of the big pieces that we were able to retain, especially amongst some of the turbulence when we were looking at Tudor, is he in, is he out, getting to keep Guendouzi. Obviously, the reaffirming that Rovella is an absolute key piece to this club and what we're building. So I think that was big for us. And those players that can be flexible, that can provide us some flexibility in how we line up, and players that have high potential, and really looking at what Atalanta has been super successful at, and maybe taking a page out of their playbook.
Exactly.
And but again, so many question marks that I can't really give it a B or higher. To your point, I think we're missing that sexy name that can come in and maybe be a little bit more solid. Nobody's going to do that, right? I know. I'll ask the question for me. That's what it'll take to boost my grade a little higher. I know Frank here on YouTube mentions that we desperately need to sign a player like the likes of James Rodriguez to balance out the low reputation players we've signed thus far. And I think I don't think he's wrong, right? If I'm looking at what's that last piece, having a player like James that's played at big clubs, is coming off of a great Copa tournament. You and I have talked a little bit about him. It all depends on what he's looking for contract wise. Can't be a long contract, needs to be at the right price. I think we've done well when you think about the Mercato and shedding salary to open up the ability to sign players and also grow with this team. And I think that's the piece that people forget is salary increases come every single year. Right. And your Rovellas, Zacanis, as these players perform, they're going to make more and more. So shedding a lot of that, getting it to a place where hopefully we can retain these players, because that has been one of the things that Lazio has done incredibly well. You said keeping Ciro. Ciro wasn't the only player that we were able to keep long term, to keep the likes of Luis Alberto, Sergej Milinkovic-Savic for so long has been one of the things that we can give Lotito a ton of credit for. And so if we want to hang on to Guendouzi, Rovella, and any player that, if Chauna ends up being a star player, we've got to have the salary space to do it. So, I think for me, I'd like to see a center back come in as well, just to provide a little bit of depth. You and I will spend some time looking at a depth chart on our next episode as we preview this season. But Gila already out with injury. Unless Casales transformed, I don't know how comfortable I feel. But what's it going to take for you to maybe bump your score up to a 9 or even a 10?
Yeah, I mean, I guess for me, the reason why I gave it as high, I mean, maybe a little bit higher than you, maybe I'm a little more happy with it, is because you can't really, it's really difficult, because if the players click and everything, the players click with Baroni, they get the system like that, they adapt quickly. All these guys like Tati, Zaccagni take the levels to that next. They get to that next level. Guys like Rovella, Guendouzi also take it to the next level. If everything clicks, then we're looking at one of the best off seasons ever, right? If it all clicks or something like that, right? So it's really difficult to sort of ever give it a 10 or to ever give it a super low number as well, because it's just so unknown. Like if we were signing guys that were just habitually bad and we're giving them terrible contracts, then yeah, you could definitely bump the scores down. But as of right now, sort of that C, B minus range is kind of the lowest or highest you can do until we see how it actually looks. Come January, I'm sure our opinions are going to be quite different, either negatively or positively. And so, yeah, a new center back and a new right back for me would bump it. That would be enough for me to really get it to a 9. Like, okay, we got a lot of key areas. I feel comfortable enough with our midfield, even though I would love to have a really true playmaker. I'm comfortable enough with our midfield. I think we have a strong core. It's just a matter of, what are we going to see from them this year? How are they going to look like under Maroni? And so for me, a center back and right back, and honestly, I'm very happy with that.
Yep. Before we talk our thoughts and feelings maybe on the new kits, we've got a new number 10 in Zaccagni, and obviously a big responsibility that comes with that. Hasn't been officially announced who our captain is. Who would you dub the captain of Lazio?
Okay, so I also want to, we're going to talk about the captain, but I also want to talk about players we're, speaking as a Zaccagni, players we're most excited about or most high about returning this season, right? Because we have a lot of players.
Yeah, it's great.
Transfer market. Let me go into that, and then we're going to captain.
Okay.
So we discuss that.
So who are you, what returning player are you most excited?
And that's why I brought this up, because for me, I will have to say Zaccagni. And it ties with the captaincy, and that's because it does seem that he's going to be that guy. But I feel that Zaccagni, I feel that he will have an extra sense of responsibility this year. Alberto's out, Ciro's gone. He kind of is like the guy now in terms of kind of the face of the team. Because you look around, we have a bunch of new faces, but guys that have been around for a few years. That have had big moments for us. The only one is Zaccagni. I mean, him and Romagnoli maybe in Providel. And so Zaccagni for me is a player I'm most excited about returning this year. I think that we saw when the pressure's on for Zaccagni, we've seen it in the Derby della Capitale when he scored against Roma. When he requires moments to be big, he has come through a lot. And I think, and I hope that we'll see that sort of that same approach, mentality, and execution with this season as a whole. As, hey, I need to step up this year. We're losing Felipe Anderson. We're losing all these guys. I need to take it a notch up. And so, I would love to see Zaccagni. I think the Zaccagni, not last season, but the year before that, was really, really bright. I would love to see that version again. And hopefully he can stay healthy, because honestly, that's the only thing that holds him back. I don't think it's power, it's not his skill. If he can stay healthy, he can contribute double-digit goal contributions.
Yeah, and I think his performance in Euros hopefully gives him a boost of confidence. Also, hopefully a chip on his shoulder. Right, he was replaced by El Shaarawy in that final game for Italy, which was questionable to say the very least. But Zaccagni was one of the few players that, when subbed on, he looked to make a difference. And I think you're right. He's also a player I think that would best be served being a captain. Just when I think about the likes of like Romagnoli is going to be a leader no matter what. I don't think he has to wear the armband. He's somebody that probably is not going to be too high, too low. He's not going to be bothered. And there's probably not a ton of options. Marusic, who's been at the club, and has worn the armband off and on. Patrick off and on, but Patrick, probably not going to be a starter unless he was out. Zaccagni, I think he's capable of being that leader, but I also think it might help him. But in terms of players, returning players, I'm most excited about. For me, it's Rovella. Again, we saw an incredible player prior to his injury, then didn't get to be featured as much under Tudor. I think this is an opportunity as we start to eye a World Cup in 2026 for him to start laying a claim to the national team and his insertion in there. And I think so highly of him. I think he's one of the best ball-winning midfielders in the league already. His tackling ability. Look, most people if you and I say that to virtually anybody that we're around in the football, soccer world, like, they're going to think we're crazy, right? They're going to be like, yep. Rovella, like, who, right? But we watch him enough, and like, it's one of the best things about his game, and doesn't get enough credit for that. And there's certainly improvements that he can make. But I'm just excited for hopefully him to take that next step, because I do think he can be a really, really special player. I think that highly of him. So, So
for the captain, so I just want to give a talk. Since talk about captains, my pick, and I think Romagnoli. I agree with Frank in the chat. that I think Romagnoli is my personal pick. I like your point that it could help Zaccagni's game. But I think the natural, I love my captains to be either number 6, the defensive midfielder, or the center back, because they can see the field. They're generally closer to the ref and stuff like that. But I think Romagnoli is a natural fit here. He bleeds blue through and through. I've been here for a while, and so that's my personal pick.
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously a lot of good reasons for Romagnoli, and I think he's going to be one of the guys that will wear the armband, right? If, let's say, Zaccagni is the captain, that when he's off the pitch, that it goes to Romagnoli. He's going to be one of the senators of the club. But yeah, I think too, when I look at contract disputes or some questions, there had been some things maybe that came up. It was like, I don't know, hopefully we don't do anything stupid, like, get rid of Romagnoli or not extend him. And some of those same questions with Cataldi, who now is rumored to be on the market and available. He's another player that could have worn the captain's armband. But yeah, I think there's a lot of good reasons for Romagnoli. But yeah, let's talk about kits as we look to close this out. Right, since we last spoke, Lazio's dropped 2 new kits. Their primary shirt in a different shade of blue, more akin to the designing features on there. They're embossed with Lazio across the chest, very similar to what Lazio did in the early 90s with Umbro. And then their third shirt, a black kit where it's got the monochrome, much brighter blue. It's got the retro badge on there, and it's got this pattern meant to represent like the heartbeat. What are your thoughts, and which one? I guess give me your ratings for both of those.
Yeah, so I'll go with the tertiary for now. It's nice. It's not bad. I'm gonna give it a 5, simply because it's just pretty meh in my opinion. It looks a lot like a training kit. And so it's okay. I'll take it. I can't complain. It's not bad at all. As for the new home one, I really love the little black touches around the collar and around the sleeves, and of course the little intricate designs throughout the kit itself. I'm gonna give that one I'm gonna say a good 8 out of 10. I really like that one. I think it looks really sharp. We've seen it already on the players in preseason. And yeah, hopefully I'm excited to get someone's name on that one. And so we'll see who we pick.
So that was going to be my final question for you before I give my ratings. You got to get a player on the back of your kit. Who are you going with this year?
James Rodriguez.
All right. I think the home shirt for me is a 9 out of 10. Honestly, if it had a collar, it would be 10 out of 10. You're talking about a timeless classic. But it's a clean shirt. It is definitely Lazio when you see it. Again, harkens back to some of the patterns we saw in the 90s. I love it. I gave a 6 out of 10 to the third shirt, the black one. Now, does look a lot better on the players. They've worn in preseason, and it's not as negative to it. And I did say in one of my videos I posted that I think it's a shirt that'll probably grow on me as time moves on. But yeah, I think a sponsor can ruin a shirt or make a shirt. And I know there's I had this debate with people that are like, nah, they want to see a sponsor on a shirt. I think particularly lots of those home shirts the past couple years, like there's no need for one. It just looks clean. It's beautiful. But I think this third shirt is missing a sponsor. I think it does look like a training top without one, with the designs on it. But rumors that Lazio will be dropping a yellow shirt as their away kit. So I am eagerly awaiting that before I make any purchases, because I will be quick to jump on a long-awaited yellow kit. It's been over a decade since we've last seen one. Such a stronghold on the identity of Lazio with some brilliant yellow shirts that they've had in the past. So Caleb, this was good to catch up. A lot of stuff that we needed to cover, a lot more that we'll be discussing as roster starts to take shape, as the depth chart that you and I are working on continues to round out, and hopefully a couple final signings that we can get behind, as well as a new third, or I guess an away kit that we're looking for. And we're gonna have an episode where we preview, we talk about the standings, we look around Serie A, we give some of our predictions that we'll inevitably laugh at 12 months from now. But all that to come here prior to the season kicking off. As always, though, sempre forza.